Let me ask the first question real quick. It says, well, actually, each one of you, do you guys have anything to share about the three diversity? I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Paradigms.
That's the one. Sorry. Them that you've seen before and experienced, or ones that you have thoughts on?
So, I can't remember what the names of them are.
Yeah, I was trying to pull it up right now, so I forgot the names of the three as well.
Oh, so it's assimilation. I don't know why I'm struggling with words today. Sorry. Differentiation and integration. So let me see. Let me pull up the actual. Just even define them and discuss them all really quick.
Well, I work in education, and they're pretty sensitive to diversity. Sometimes, like they really try for the assimilation, which is I think the third paradigm, right?
Mm-hmm.
They really try for assimilation. I don't know that they always get there or go about it the right way, but
I've worked for companies that really target on the assimilation, where we're all the same, so there's just one way to do things, and that's their way. So no matter what your kind of personality is, or your background, or whatever it may be, you gotta, just like it says, assimilate. You gotta work to what their standards are and their way of their workflow on there. And for some people, it works. They like that. They like having the workflow set up for them, having controlled barriers. And for other people, it not so much.
yeah, and I think most companies I've worked for have followed the discrimination and fairness paradigm. They try to treat everybody equally. But then, I also worked in construction for a long time, and there wasn't anything, not really much diversity there, and a lot of like blatant racism in construction, at least in Southern California. I remember we had a African American guy that came on our crew, and he was just given a hard time all the time. But I was too young to know any better. I was just a kid and didn't really understand how to, have some kind of role in shifting that.
Yeah, see, I said it's kind of like construction, the land serving. It's at times you can see that there are discrimination too, and even towards women, they're kind, but you can tell that a lot of them feel admin workers and the women aren't as smart as them. And I don't know if it has to relate to field or anything. A lot of different situations and a lot of different jobs, there's just a culture that way,
Yeah.
I bet there's a lot of stereotyping at a construction company, women working there. Even if it's in office.
There's even, I don't know if this even counts as discrimination or not, but I even feel like in some situations, those that work inside and those that work outside, there's ways that people feel like there's, oh, they get to be inside because they're this way, or they get to work outside because they're not smart enough, or they're a certain race, or they're, I feel like that happens a lot in some of the as well. Not in all, but in some of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotyping between like who would fit better in a blue collar and a white collar job.
Yeah. Oh goodness. And I guess one other thing I was going to say too real quick, when looking through these, it was kind of like I thought about how we're always taught to be like a child, because a child it's not that a child sees it that we're all the same. They know that, a child knows that their friends may be different, but at the same time, they look at them all like they're the same. And I think that's very important, even when you're older, because, you need to look at everyone like they're people and that they have responsibilities. I think that's the third simulation, where you have to integrate people and show everybody. And it just reminded me of, the saying, think like a small child.
Yeah, I think Paula is here.
Yeah, sorry guys.
That's okay. Glad you're here.
I had written down 7:30, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, 7.
Well, we're not sure. We were all talking about that. We're all a little unsure of what time we actually said. So we're good.
Okay.
We just started talking. She started by asking us if we had experiences with any of the 3 paradigms. So you jumped on at a good time. If you want to answer that.
Experience with the 3 paradigms. I can't say that I have, not in, being an employee with the company or as an employer. I mean, I've had some other issues come up, but nothing that really related to any of those 3.
In my job I'm in now, actually, I'm in insurance right now, medical insurance. We process a lot of medical bills that come in that for some reason the system can't automatically do. So there's a lot of investigation we have to do to figure out what's going on, what the problem is there, and what the benefits are, and pay it out or do whatever needs to be done. But there's a lot of different ways to research and look at things, and one of the cool things about the job is it allows us to really work together with other employees, kind of lead, and they all have a different way of going about the same claim and come out with the same result. So I think that's kind of a form of integration that the company allows, because people, they have different ways of looking at things and doing things, but it still ends up with the same result. You get to experience that and come up with your own that works for you.
I agree, Tyler. I think it's important that, any of those 3 can really work. It just kind of depends on the company. Do any of you have any other examples, or what do you guys think? Some of that, should we go through and maybe talk about some of the benefits and some of the disadvantages of all of them, or do you guys want to just move on?
Pros and cons of each if you want.
Yeah, just so that we all can maybe get a better understanding. I mean, unless you all understand them perfectly, I just thought it might be good to hear everyone's input on it.
Well, the first one, the discrimination and fairness one, that's kind of, it's, to me, it sounded like that's following the letter of the law, but not really incorporating, the benefits that you get from, learning about somebody else's culture. It's just about, okay, we have to do this. We have to have so many women. We have to have so many, different races, etc. They didn't really look to take advantage of what those different cultures or races or, the different mindset of a man versus a woman. That wasn't taken into consideration at all. Did I lose you guys?
No, sorry. I think you brought up a great point. Sorry, I just have to keep muting it because I have a little puppy here with me and she won't stop talking. So sorry. I think you bring up a great point. Like they did. I mean, they have the diversity and they, you know, they realize they have to meet those goals, but in the end they don't. And the fact that, yeah, different cultures and different religions and different people all could have different strengths, but nobody really is getting to know people. You know, so I think you bring up a great point, Paula. Thank you.
It's almost like
Yeah,
in
I
that.
just feel like they.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, they're missing out on those different viewpoints that could, you know, benefit the company.
And it just seems to me like they're in this paradigm. They're just trying to be compliant with the federal standards and just keep from getting sued. And so that leaves a feeling when you have somebody that's from from a different background, that or different race or different gender or whatever, that they're just there because of that gender, or they're there because of that race, because we've got to check that box on the form. So that's kind of how I see that paradigm.
Yeah, I agree. Of the, I don't remember what the whole article was called, but the ones that talked about filing situations, which of those people do you think any of them fell under this, or do you think they all fell under this category, where people just hired just because they had to, and then ended up discriminating against those people?
Yeah, I think that's very possible. Especially the one where the guy was Muslim. It's like he didn't really fit in with that company, and he may have been hired just because they wanted to check off that box, But they wanted him to be there, but to just be like a regular manager.
Yeah, his style of managing was not a good fit for that company. So I also was kind of on that mind that I think his ethnicity had a big influence on the decision to bring him on, was to kind of fill a status quo without really checking, seeing would our company culture really fit with his style of management.
Yeah, I think that would. Even the one, I don't remember what the girl's name is, and I don't even know if I can pronounce it, but there was the one girl who had, a disability, and they had her there, and then once she'd gotten hurt, they just felt like it was morally correct just to keep her there. And in the end, when they had the first chance, they kind of messed with her reviews and then fired her for being disabled. I thought that was another one that was just so that they didn't look bad, but they didn't do it correctly.
I said the same thing, that they purposely waited so it wouldn't look like they were doing it because of that, when in fact it really was.
Yeah. That was Larici. There was another one. I'm trying to think of which one it was. Is there any other ones that you felt like also fit under this? Anyone else?
No, that was the guy that worked for the bank that, I don't know how to say his name, Xieng.
Oh, yeah.
That he went to classes, he went to tutor, and they still wouldn't promote him.
Yeah, that was a big discrimination against him. He was a Cambodian or something like that.
Yeah, he's Cambodian.
Wasn't that the one where, in order to be promoted to the loan officer position, you had to have a college degree? Am I thinking of the right one?
No, they kept going on about his English, even though he had years of successfully, for a year almost, performing the same role without any problems. And he had taken, English classes and gotten certificates and stuff.
Okay.
That one, the dead end for, again, I don't know, the Cambodian man. That whole situation just made me so sad because he worked so hard and in the end ended up getting sick because they weren't They were promising him things that they really had no intention of giving him.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if you don't want me in that position, don't give me a bunch of steps to take to get there, and then not, if you don't have any intention, at least be honest about it.
That company set themselves up to have that class action lawsuit against them, especially when they have him perform the role the full time. That's, how many, what was it? It was like almost 3 pay grades above him. And he did it for over half a year, but they were still paying him the lower pay grade on there. I mean, that sets up for all types of, problems for the company.
I think you all bring up some really great points, and I think those 3 situations did all fit that first. How do you pronounce that word?
Paradigm.
Paradigm. Okay, thank you. So I've just been trying to avoid it. Should we move on to the next one? The access and I don't know why I'm struggling so much today. Legitimacy paradigm.
Sure.
Do any of you have any thoughts on that one? That was the one that was more...
That was like the company that found, the financial company that found that instead of having U.S. workers work in the European market, they get Europeans that studied in the U.S. work the European market. And so that's what they concentrated in. And they found they were having tons and tons of success, but no one ever stopped to think, well, what would happen if all our European market there, if all the workers, the company said, you know what, we quit. We don't have a backup plan for that. So it was kind of like, we celebrate differences, but they're only focusing, just the European people to work in Europe. They didn't have anyone else working, the Europe market. So they're celebrating, hey, we get all these Europeans to work in Europe, but what about assimilating, integrating other people in there so they can learn about the culture and how to work that market.
Yeah, it's like who's going to appeal to what customer. So it's like filling expectations, but it's still not really taking advantage of the talents that diversity brings in to an organization.
Yeah, I think this one is one of, the most important, that shows exactly how you can utilize the different diversities and how much, even just having, European people, having, a French team or having a Spanish team, so that you can reach more markets because you have a more diverse group, and how important and what a huge difference that can actually make.
Yeah, I've worked in call centers before, and I always elected to do their bilingual department, because I speak Spanish for it, and it always was helpful because sometimes, the people there, they only speak Spanish, but they wouldn't really practice English that much. So sometimes an English customer would get onto the Spanish line and they would have a hard time or get upset, or sometimes, vice versa. Maybe a Spanish person comes on but is trying to speak English with you and wants to try to do English, things like that. And then they started having seeing that, the employer decided we really want to try to integrate all of our employees and to start learning to be a little bit bilingual. So they actually started up classes for the bilingual, for the English only people to start taking Spanish classes there at work. You know, they still on the payroll on there.
What a cool thing to do, and I think that's a perfect example too of when you can, when you can use this paradigm. That's really cool that they did that.
Yeah, I was really impressed.
I know.
They decided to go that way.
I know something. I think it's kind of comical because I don't know a whole lot of Spanish. You could say I know enough to get myself in trouble because they'll think I know Spanish. But my primary secretary does not speak English or prefers not to speak English, but she fully understands what I say, but yet she won't respond in English. She responds back in Spanish. And then I'm totally lost because I don't understand enough Spanish. It's the same way. They don't speak a lot of English. And I know my numbers fairly well, so I can tell them how much their bill is, or I can give them a phone number in Spanish. And then they'll say, thank you in English. And I always kind of chuckle about that.
Yeah, I see it a lot here. And a lot of it has to do with some people they understand and they can actually speak if they wanted to, but a lot of them it's because their fears of judgment for that and how their accent, or are they going to know the right words to say all the time. So a lot of people, they just fall back on that and say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with what I know.
Well, and I feel the same way because, it's like if I mispronounce it, it could be a bad word when it's not what I intend. So I have the same fear. I understand where they're coming from.
And I think one thing too is it's so funny is, I took languages in high school, but I know a lot of other countries, especially European ones, they're required to learn a second language, typically, English, if it's not their first language. And I feel often like, if anyone says anything to me or if someone has an accent, I do typically have not trying to be mean or anything, it's hard to understand. And I feel like when there's a lot of barriers like that, that's when there becomes issues in the workplace. When everyone feels uncomfortable, saying or attempting to speak someone else's language.
It is, yeah. It's a hurdle to jump through. And what helps a lot is, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but the more you try, the better you're going to get. But apart from that, the other person that's listening, that you're speaking to, they see that you're trying, and they have that. They're 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to have a mindset of judgment, but rather, usually, if I'm impressed, and I'll either help you with what you want to say, or you know what, it's understandable what you're saying. It might not be perfect, but I understand what you're saying, and that's fine.
You guys ready to move on to the last one?
Yep.
I'm just so grateful for all the thoughts that you guys have already shared, because I feel like I've already gotten a better understanding of some of these more than I already had. So thank you for that.
Sure.
The last one is the emerging paradigm. What do you guys think about that one? You guys have any thoughts on that one?
Well, that's kind of the ideal, right? That's when
Mm-hmm.
everything's fully integrated. Takes advantage of everybody's talents, everybody's their natural abilities, and really, I don't know, just um, it's the ideal situation, but it's a challenging place to get.
Yeah, it definitely can be challenging, and I feel like even with this one, I feel like there could be a lot of different ways to achieve this. But I mean, I've worked maybe two other places. My whole life, I worked at a learning center that was mostly the Indian culture, and it was amazing. Just to even learn about other cultures. Or the place I work now, um, you can even learn about other religions and hear the similarities, and even learning more about other people, which I think is one of the main things about HR, is you're learning compassion and you're learning how to work with people and how they work. And you can't really do that unless you know someone's culture or the way that they run. So I think that's why this is one of the perfect ways for diversity in the office.
Sorry, I was talking away and then realized I was on mute. I really liked the sentence in there about all being on the same team with our differences, not despite them. Being able to embrace, somebody else's work ethic a little bit differently than what mine is, or one of my other team members. For example, I have one gal who prefers to work in the afternoons only. And that works because I have another gal that prefers to work just in the mornings. So they pair up to make one full-time person. And it's because of things in their lives they want to take care of outside of work, but still want to have a job. One is Hispanic, the other gal is white. One is LDS, the other one is it's a Christian faith, but I can't remember now what church she attends. But it was about being able to do these different things and being able to work with that, and I was able to take advantage of that and split them in and cover my shift for the entire day.
That's really cool. My job right now, they kind of integrate they call it a flex schedule. So you have your base hours that you would come into work, but because they know and understand, life happens, things happen, you can come in an hour early or an hour later than your base schedule, not have to worry about anything. And even if you have to like leave early or get to work even later than that, as long as you just let them know kind of ahead of time the hours and end the week with 40 hours, they're fine with it. So I think that's another really cool thing that some departments or some companies kind of incorporate to help and be flexible with the needs that other people have.
Thank you both for sharing. I agree. I think it's very important, to have understanding or have, management that understands if you need to leave early, or, if it works better, you have to pick up a child, that if you work in the mornings and everything. I think understanding and compassion is super key when it comes to management. Other than just, having rules and everything, I think it's important to understand who is working for you. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the 3 paradigms?
Is there, comparing the three, and I think everybody would like to see companies reach that last one, where we embrace everybody's differences. Is there an easy way to do that? It talked about, making that shift and the differences and changes that, come about, not only by making the shift, but the benefits from it. But it doesn't, well, it's not an easy thing, because there's always going to be that one person or one manager who, bucks the system, is what my mom would say.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to overcome. I mean, people, everybody comes from diverse backgrounds, even, the white manager who, grew up in the South or something, like they're bringing their diversity as well. And so you have to find a way to balance it. And companies that achieve that, I think that's really impressive.
So even with that question you just asked, Paula, I do think that it probably would be hard to do, but do you even think that, like with the doohickey, that we are working on that problem, don't you even think that some of the things, I guess even small changes, I mean, you can't, like you said, there is always that one person, but I wonder if there are still small changes that, you can still make a system work well enough that you can avoid, or at least, avoid or have not as many issues.
Change is hard, and for some people it's harder than for others. They're not ever going to change, and unfortunately they really make it difficult for a company, or small business even, to go the direction that to go. Because I did have a situation like that where I had an employee who was just, didn't want to do this, why do we have to change? I said, well, because the company is changing, so the agency has to change to follow suit, and this is going to be what we're going to implement starting this day. She just wouldn't do it. She refused. And so, I had to start going through that process of documenting and reprimanding, and you've got to do it this way. This is what, I have to answer to my manager, etc. And eventually I just made some cutbacks and laid her off, because she was not going to change. And the whole atmosphere in the office, the whole team, I hate to say it, was relieved, and we were able to move forward and actually was able to make our goals.
That's a good point. And I haven't had much work experience, but you have a good point. Sometimes change is difficult, and sometimes you have to make even more difficult decisions just to get things to work out. Thank you for sharing, Paula.
You're welcome.
So, and just, I'm not sure how long we've been meeting, but it's been a while. We have lots to talk about. Do you guys want to, so I'll just ask you, do you guys want to talk more about making differences matter? Or did any of you watch the videos?
I'm sure I did.
See, what were the videos called?
I know I did, but I'll have to get a refresher real quick to jog my memory.
you remember them off the top of
Well,
your head. Or the article, what did you guys think about, do you guys have any outstanding thoughts about Counseling with Our Counsels by M. Russell Ballard? Gotta say everything slower today.
that's a really good talk. I didn't watch the video. I just pulled the talk up and read it. But I remember it. I remember watching the talk. I think it was part of like they did those worldwide training sessions. I think they did that for part of one of the worldwide training sessions. And it's really smart, and it's really it's really the way the church is going right now. Even though that talk is kind of old, it happened a long time ago. It really is what they're teaching us to do in the church, and to have those, like the ward council, and have the ward council do the bulk of what's going on in the ward instead of just dumping it all on the bishopric. So yeah, that's a really great article.
One thing that I took from that, because I am kind of the control freak, and it's hard for me to let things go and assign it, and then I'm like, every 5 seconds, did you get it done yet? Did you get it done yet? Did you call so-and-so yet? So I had to learn to let go a little bit, and here's the job. I need it done by Friday. And then I had to just sit on my hands and bite my tongue sometimes to let the person do their job. So I took a lot out of that. And, you can't, my shoulders aren't broad enough. The bishop's shoulders are not broad enough to carry the weight of everything. And, I have to let my counselors help me. I have to let my employees help me with certain things, and not try to do it all, because I can't.
Hey guys, my computer's about to do a force restart on me, so it's about to kick me out, but I'll come right back in.
Okay.
Real quick off what Paula said, I think she brings up a great point, and that's one thing that's always impressed me about the church is the fact that there are so many councils, and so, you do have more people listening, and you do have more people working to help others. And Paula, I have issues sometimes with that too, where I always feel like, oh well, either I should just do all of it. I don't want to burden someone else, or and if someone does do it, I feel like I'm like obsessing over it. And so I think it's important, to delegate and to make sure that you can't get everything done, and bishops do that, and other councilmen, the prophet does that, has other people to break up the situation so that it's easier for everyone. And I feel like too, even with I think it was just last week, you saw the importance of, having teamwork. And if the leader was able to, the coach was able to see early on that he needed to make sure that there was a leader, and make sure that there was certain people that had certain delegations, maybe the teams would have worked out better. And I feel like that's important in the workplace as well.
Yeah, it's true, because it doesn't matter, what your capabilities are. At some point, you're going to either get burned out or stressed out, and then everything's going to fall apart.
Very, very true. And I'm sure that's what happens quite often. you know, that someone just gets burned out, or, you know, like we said earlier, there's some sort of barrier, and in the end, people burn out quicker. So I think that's why, another reason why diversity is important, and learning people's strengths is important. Okay, real quick. I'm not trying to hurry the meeting. I just know that we have lots to talk about and it's already getting late.
Yeah. I want to change subject. Did you watch the video about the color blind or color brave?
Yes, I did. I was just going to go and start talking about that. What did you think?
I was like, you know, when she was telling her story and she's talking about, you know, the reason I tell this story, it's true. As she was leading up to it and telling it, I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to mistake this person for, you know, staff or help or something when he's there as a, you know, suit and tie. How could you mistake somebody in a suit and tie to be kitchen help?
Oh,
You know, and that's
I know.
exactly, you know, her story, you know, that's exactly what happened. And it was just because the person assumed based on, you know, their race that, oh, there's no way they're a speaker, or, you know, I was just like, oh my gosh. And it's sad, but I think that still happens today. You know, this isn't something that happened, you know, back in the 20s or 30s, obviously, but I think it's still prevalent, you know, today in 2016 too.
I know, and that's kind of, you know, sad and scary to think about. I thought that was shocking. And I'm sure, just like you said, I'm sure instances like that happen more often than we realize.
Yeah, I did enjoy that video. Matter of fact, I'm hoping to go back and watch it again because it just really kind of struck a chord for me.
So that being said, what did you think about Hobson talking about color brave? What do you guys feel like that means? What would it look like in the workplace?
Well, for me, it's not judging a person by the color of their skin. You know, it's removing all those walls and fences about, you know, where they're from or what their faith is and how it can do this because of that. You know, how do you know they can't do it? I don't know. It's prejudging. And it just, that's something that needs to go away.
That's like the one case that we read that the guy said, "Oh, don't hire women because they can't lift more than 25 pounds."
What was that, Rory? You cut out for one part of that, the middle of
I
it.
said there was one case we read where that was the doohickeys case. I'm just trying to get them all straight in my head. I had this class in another class that's very case heavy, but the doohickeys case, the guy says, you know, don't hire women because they can't lift more than 25 pounds. You know, that's.
I know. I even thought that story was shocking, and that was one thing about that whole case that we had to read, was because, I mean, I didn't realize how naive I was and how often situations happen like that where people are discriminated against. You know, that was shocking to me. You know, and Paula, it's like you said, how can you know that someone, because of their gender, race, or their religion, that they, you know, aren't good enough to do something? I mean, how do you get rid of all that judgment? I feel like that's one thing in the world, you know, there is a lot of judgment, and we're always told not to judge. But I feel like it's so common that.
as we get more diverse, is my mic on? Yes,
Yep.
it is. Sorry. As we get more diverse, over generations, um, I think some of those judgments disappear because I think they're learned from our parents or from our grandparents or great grandparents, and it just kind of, as each generation, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but each generation gets a little bit more used to or less judgmental of others, then those walls come down. I don't know.
Oh, sorry, what?
I was just going to say, do you think that some of these things are kind of taught to us as children, and it's hard to kind of break out of those sometimes?
No, I mean, I definitely think that's the case. It is hard to sometimes break away from that judgment. I said in the beginning, which again was probably kind of naive, they tell us to be just, like unto a child. A child doesn't see, a race, doesn't see, someone being different. And it would be amazing if we all were like that, but I just feel like in such a competitive world, it gets difficult. So I think you bring up a great point too. The more diverse everything is, I mean, maybe there's more understanding. I even feel like sometimes being LDS, I feel like, because I grew up with a decent amount of members, but there's been a lot of situations where I was the only one, and I think that that's kind of at times helped me understand how to be more understanding towards others. Do you think that that's helped either of you in any way, or did that even make sense?
It did. I have an experience back from my high school days. I wanted to be part of the in crowd, and I was naive, just naive enough that when I got invited to these parties that, I would go and then I'd be uncomfortable because somebody would bring alcohol. And one time I asked my girlfriend, I said, Susie, why do you invite me to these parties with you? She goes, I guess this was a good judgment, but her answer was, because I know you won't drink and I'll have a safe ride home. That was kind of the last party I ever went to, but that
Somebody's getting used.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes I don't remember which case it was, but it was the one where I just remember their names being Proctor and Smith. Smith felt like he was being discriminated against because Proctor held him to a higher standard. And sometimes I definitely feel like being, LDS faith, I'm held to a higher standard because, someone knows I'm not going to drink. They know that I'm not going to curse in public. I'll have, a more professional. I don't know if professional is the right word, but do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like you're held to a higher standard? So that one, I felt like I understood Smith and where he was coming from.
Yeah, because you're judged. You go to a restaurant and somebody knows you're LDS, and then they see you drinking a dark soda, and they wonder, what are they drinking? I gave a talk not too long ago in Sacrament meeting, and I don't remember now who the story was about, but he was in business, and they'd have to go to these, networking social events, and alcohol was being served, and he was uncomfortable. And he talked about how at first he ordered a soda and then realized that some other people were drinking alcohol and it looked like his soda. So then he went to 7-Up, and then he realized the same thing. So he decided that he had to find something that would distinguish him that he was not participating in the alcohol. So he asked the bartender for a glass of milk. And he said that, over the course of going to these things over several months, that, others joined in drinking milk. And that just kind of, we are looked at differently. We are held to a higher standard. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think sometimes, we can be judged harshly also.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a great story to share, Paula. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, being judged. I just was saying that I understand where some of them were coming from, and, sometimes it's good to be held to a higher standard, and I think that's awesome that in the end he got a glass of milk and other people joined in.
Or I'll have to look that up, Google it, who gave the talk about milk.
So just real quick, this was because it was a lot of reading this week, so we could even be on here for hours because with all the videos and the multiple readings, I thought this topic was so interesting, but it was a lot to cover. So one last thing I'll ask each one of you, and hopefully Tyler will come back and I'll ask him too. If you were to be a manager of a corporation or to own a business, how do you think you would handle diversity?
It's hard because I think that, I look at what they're asking for, and I think that I would probably fit in one of the first paradigms, at least at first. I don't know how you cross that threshold into that third paradigm, because it's just it's a tough thing. I don't know.
You said you liked the first one. Is that what you said?
No, I said that I feel like I would be in one of the first two paradigms. That I could really see myself in the second paradigm. I don't know how you get to the third. I don't know what you can do to get there. Like, you have to change the mindset of, the other people that work there.
Of your employees. I think you bring up a great point. And like we said earlier too, it's so hard to achieve the third paradigm. But Paula said too, and this is one thing, I think it was office procedures that I took, and I learned a lot about the importance of change. You constantly have to be progressing, and you constantly, have to find better ways to achieve. So, I guess, I don't know if you ever reach the third paradigm, but I guess you have to process of elimination and, multiple tries and fail to get there.
Question. Based on these three paradigms, do you think you move from one to the other to the third one, or can you jump from 1 to 3 or 2 to 3 without, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I was wondering too, because I know we were saying in the very beginning, you can even have success with 1 or 2. So that's how I don't know if you can. I'm sure you can jump. I'm sure you can even, and I guess mix and match, because the first 2 are kind of like mixed together to create the third.
Yeah, because the first one was more, to me, about following the letter of the law, being in compliance. But, you weren't benefiting from the diversity of the cultures or the, thought processes of the different people.
Paula, you cut off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I?
Yeah, you did. Sorry.
What did you hear?
Different was the last thing. No, you started talking. You were talking about the first paradigm. You said the different
Okay,
diversities.
so the first one, the first paradigm, that's about the compliance, letter of the law, and then they don't benefits of the different work ethics of the different individuals within the company. And it's about checking off those boxes. Okay, yeah, we've got so many females. Yeah, we've got so many Hispanics. Yes, we've got so many African Americans. Yes, we've got so many, it's just, it's a compliance thing. And that's not the best paradigm. But how do we get from that one to, even the second one's better than that one, in my opinion. But the third one would be the best option. How do we get there?
I'm agreeing the order that the first one is, okay, and then the second one gets better. I guess it starts with management, and it comes to finding out, or putting someone in management that works directly with the people, or maybe HR too. Maybe HR is the most important, where you have to have someone who understands the importance of the policies and understands all those things, but at the same time can be compassionate towards the people, having a middleman between the two. Maybe that's one thing that'll help, or having councils or meetings where everybody's more on the same page. I don't know, how else do you guys think that you can reach the third one? Welcome back, Tyler.
Thanks. Still went into this first, still loading up all the rest of the stuff I had before.
Oh. Well, we were just talking about, I asked him, what approach would you take to add diversity if you were a manager? And then we were just talking about ways that can you jump from one of the first two paradigms to the third one, or what exactly do you need to do to reach, the perfect work situation? Yeah, the perfect balance.
That is a tough one, because the hiring manager obviously wants to find the perfect fit for it, and sometimes each person is a little bit different in how they think about it. I don't know if y'all are on or already past the topic of the ESPN thing. What's her face that did the color blindness, color strong? She talked about the ESPN guy when the hiring managers would ask him, well, do you want us to hire, or do you want us to hire the person with the higher education? And his answer was always yes on there. So it's finding that balance. You're not just looking to hire the minority because they're a minority, and neither do you hire someone just because they have a better educational background. You really need to do more digging into this person than just looking at what's on paper. You need to see what kind of fit would they actually be. That way you don't fall into that same situation like the Arab. Maybe he had a very good background and history, but he wasn't a good fit for that company culture.
And thank you for sharing. Anyone else have anything to add?
No.
No.
I don't either.
Does anyone, after all the topics and all the readings and the videos, does anyone else have anything else that stood out that we didn't talk about?
I don't.
No. All right, then if no one has anything, did you say you have something, Tyler?
Oh no, was just gonna say, no, unless you wanted to go over what you answered on those little case situations of if you thought it was discrimination or not.
Well, we kind of need to get laid out on what we're doing with the other project.
Doohickey.
The doohickey. Yeah. Okay, we can start that. Let me stop the broadcast. And then we'll go ahead and start that. That's fine.